Okay, so let's see, what do we got here? We got Charles and Sandra, Eric and Lee, and presumably other people watching. So, and
we got 100 people here today.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us. I'm always a little bit nervous with all this technology and stuff. Anyway, we won't go into the details, but there was a two-step process to join this Zoom conference. I must have been in the wrong one. At any rate, you know, why do we do these 90-day challenges? All right. I think anyone who is using LingQ regularly is motivated, but it helps us when we have a very specific goal. You know, if we're walking the dog and we throw a ball out in the field, the dog is gonna chase after that ball. It just motivates the dog. He's happy walking along at a leisurely pace, but when you throw a ball out there, the dog gets really keen to chase down that ball. And I find it's the same with me now. I'm quite keen now with my Arabic. I've kind of been going along with Arabic and Persian. I did some Turkish along the way, and I kind of feel that I'm not getting to where I want to get to as fast as I want to get there. And so I said, you know what, I should really focus on my Arabic. Leave aside the Persian. As much as I like Persian, I like Turkish, there's all kinds of things I like, but I have to put those aside and really focus in on Arabic. And so I look at my goals in two ways. I look at my goals in terms of what I want to be able to do in the language. And then I look at specific goals in terms of the statistics on LingQ. So I'll first talk about the sort of general goals, and then I'll show you my specific goals, showing you my profile on LingQ. And I should say that the reason we have all these statistics on LingQ is for that reason. Very often in learning languages, it's easy to have the feeling we're not getting anywhere, or we're putting all this work in and still don't understand the same things, or still have the same difficulty saying things. So there's that perception. And this is particularly like in the first 3 months, or in the beginning, we have this feeling that, you know, something that we didn't understand at all, we now understand to some extent. We're able to say a few things. And so we have a great sense of achievement. Wow, look at me. You know, 5 months ago, I didn't understand a thing, and now I understand something. So that the achievement is quite clear. But then we enter that, what's known as the plateau, which is that long, long, long period. And the reason is very simple. And that is that the high frequency words are just that, very high frequency. And they show up all the time. So they show up so often that we kind of get some of them. So we get that high frequency vocabulary, but frequency declines very, very quickly in every language. And there's all kinds of studies that show this. And even if you go to a specific domain like science or music or whatever it is, the frequency declines very, very quickly. So pretty soon we're dealing with trying to learn a language where the words that we want to learn may show up. You know, if it were a book, it might show up once every 30 pages. And yet we still need that word, and words like that, we need them in order to understand meaningful content that's meaningful to us. So in my case, I want to understand these Arabic podcasts from Al Jazeera. Now, I know Al Jazeera is owned by the Qatari government and is propaganda. I don't care whether it's propaganda or not. It talks about subjects that are interesting. It talks about nuclear power in the Gulf. It talks about, you know, Israel, Palestine. It talks about all kinds of stuff from a perspective which I may or may not agree with, and it uses all of that vocabulary. And so I'm there listening to it, and without reading it, I understand, you know, I pick out words. And in fact, sometimes I pick out many, many words, but it doesn't come in as meaning. It comes in as words. And I want to get to the point where I just, and of course, so I should first enter. So then I'll get the text and I'll read it and I'll look up words and gradually get a better sense of what's there. And then I listen to it again and I get a better sense, but it's still not just plain meaning. It's words. And I want to get to where I can, because I'm subscribed to this podcast, without even having to go to a transcript on LingQ. I pick up 2 or 3 podcasts in the morning and I listen to them, and there's 80% meaning there. That's my goal. I want to get to that point, because then I can really enjoy kind of getting the language in me, and it's not as much work. So, and because I don't have a lot of people here in Vancouver that I can speak to in Arabic, yeah, I'd like to speak better. And I will, during this period, I will speak more often, and I will improve. My listening improves my speaking. But my main goal at this stage is to understand these podcasts. If I can do that, if I have good comprehension on these podcasts, the speaking will take care of itself. I just have to speak more, and then I'll speak better. So that's my specific goal in these 90 days. I want to get to a point where I can understand, instead of say 20% of these podcasts, I want to understand 60%, occasionally 100%. There'll be stretches where I understand crystal clear what they're saying. And then of course I lose it because there's too many words I don't know, but I want to get to that stage. Now let's see if I can share my screen, because I haven't done this before with this technology. So let's see what happens here. Bear with me. So share screen. So I only have the one screen. Usually I have two. So I'm going to go to my desktop and then try and move to, so Zoom. Let's move this guy out of the way here, and link learn languages. Hopefully, maybe Mark, you can give me a signal. Okay. You are sharing screen. You can see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, super.
Yeah, it's
all right.
working.
All right, it works. I'm always amazed when this technology works. Usually when it doesn't work, it's because I'm stupid. So it's comforting to know that I did it right. So here is my, Arabic page here. And so Latha is this podcast series from Al Jazeera, which I have transcribed. I have a lady in Morocco who transcribes them. I have written to Al Jazeera several times to ask for permission to share them. They never answer. I'm inclined to share them anyway, but I don't want to get in trouble, so I don't. So this is strictly for my own use. One day, if they ever answer, or if we ever get permission, then we'll share them. So if I now go, how do I move these guys? Okay, so if I go to my profile, which is over here, my icon, I click on that and I go to profile. There was a way to get this to show up at the top of the screen. Anyway, so now it all seems to work more slowly in, when we're viewing it together. But so I find this profile, it's kind of very interesting. So the first thing I think is worth looking at is my history with Arabic, to give you some background, okay? So if we look at, say, known words, actually, one thing I'll show you, first of all, on my statistics. If I look at all time, and I think these statistics, they could be better perhaps, but they're very useful. I find them motivating to go to. So you'll see here that for whatever reason, Link told me that with the amount of time that I spend with Arabic, I should know 20,000 words. Well, I don't. I know 13,638 words. On the other hand, Link says, you should have saved or created 11,000 links. In fact, I haven't. I have created 50,000 links. So right off the bat, this tells me that I'm going through a lot of stuff, looking up words, fighting my way through this content, creating 50,000 links. But most of those links are still unknown. They're still yellow. They're still out there. I'm maybe step one of 10 steps to getting to where I will know these words. Because as we all know from experience, we can see the same word lots of times and not remember it. So my immediate goal is to take these 50,000 links that I've created and try to convert them into known words. And I would like to get to 20,000 known words. I know from experience that 20,000 known words is still not enough to 100% understand these podcasts. Hopefully I'll get beyond 20,000 words, but I want to set, a reasonable goal. I've been at Arabic, as I'll show you shortly, for quite a long time, and I'm only at 13,000 known words. So I have to essentially increase my known words by 50% of where I am now. It'll be 60% comprehension. It won't be much higher than that, but it'll still be significantly better than I am now. So the links learned, I don't worry about too much. Those are, words that I've moved to known. As long as I take care of getting these known words, the known words number up. And just to clarify, not every known word is a word that I deliberately learned. Many of these, because they are related to words that I already know, I just won't look them up because I know what they are. So the sort of incidentally learned words is quite a large number, not as big in Arabic as would be the case for, say, an English speaker learning French, because there are so many words that we recognize from another language that the sort of, incidentally acquired vocabulary is much, much larger. Not the case with Arabic. So my goal, the two principal goals that I'm going to work on are getting my known words up to 20,000. I'm not going to worry. I have more than enough created links. Now, I could spend my time on, I showed you that Latha, this Arabic podcast series. I got, 30 articles there. I could go back into them and try to get to those yellow words and learn them. However, there's something about new. There's something about not going over stuff that you heard and listened to before. It's just more appealing to go for new. So I have my collaborator there in Morocco. My instructions to her are just pick out 2 podcasts that you think are interesting and transcribe them every week. I may move her up to 3 a week. It's always more interesting to go into new material that you haven't heard before. It's fresh for the brain. And I will see the yellow words in those contents. Some of the yellow words that I have in the content that I've already been over, those yellow words will show up again. So I will be adding to my, links number, but it'll be incidental. My goal is to get my known words up to 20,000 so that I can understand the podcast better. Now, one last thing before I stop sharing my screen and we break out into our groups is just to show you. So I started Arabic first of the 3 Middle Eastern languages. If I look at this Arabic and I go all time, you'll see that I've been at it for quite a while. If I just look at known words, I could look at listening, I could look at other indicators. But you'll see that I started back in January of 2018. But then there were periods where I didn't do much, and here as well. So there's been sort of peaks and valleys. And I think I would like to go for the next 3 months to make this a high plateau of activity. And if I, just to show you, for example, if I look at my, Turkish, for example, we will see that the Turkish was all bunched up into here. And then I haven't done anything. And I decided that I couldn't do Arabic, Persian, and Turkish. It was just simply too much. So I dropped the Turkish, but I loved it and I will go back to it. But it took away from my Arabic. Similarly, if I look at my Persian, where did it go? Russian, Swedish. We got to get more consistent in the order of the Romanian. I've lost it. Where is that green and red flag? Ah, here we are. So here again, you'll see with Persian, I had 2 periods of concentrated activity into Persian. So all of this took away from my Arabic. If I had focused only on Arabic during that period, I would be further ahead, but I wouldn't have Persian and Turkish. So, it's always a matter of choice. So now my goal is to focus on Arabic in the 90-day challenge, achieve this higher degree of comprehension of my podcast, which will necessarily mean that I end up speaking better. And I will do several online discussions in Arabic with Arabic tutors through the 90-day period to give people a sense of how I'm progressing, because my ability to express myself will be a reflection of how many words, the extent to which I've become more familiar with the language. Okay, stop share. All right, so there you have it. Now, I guess, Eric, you take over and split people into groups.
All right, just before I split people into groups, I just wanted to, hopefully you guys can hear me. Apologies, I'm in a cafe. I have one question that I'd like to ask you. We have a lot of people today, and unfortunately won't be able to go through everyone's questions, obviously, but there's a question we got from an email that I'll read out to Steve.
Good.
And it should, if your answer should help others. So here we go. It seems to me that at one point, a key movement is to turn active. Reading text, hearing podcasts, using videos is fine, but doing that for too long or forever is like being a bird fed by his mother. At one point, it is essential to become active. It can be, for example, describing one's vacation by writing or talking. When doing that, you search words that you need to know, that you need now, that you want to say, that you want to use over and over again. You start building your own castle of words. You reverse this process, you walk by yourself, it makes a huge difference, and you start remembering much more easily. Steve, what do you think of active learning and when to start?
Well, I mean, the key to successful language learning is to enjoy the process and to spend the time. So if you are motivated to keep a diary, if you are motivated to talk to yourself, if you can find a circle of friends to speak to, if you want to get on, Skype with a tutor, these are all good things to do. In other words, you want to be motivated, you want to do things that are meaningful to you, and you want to spend enough time. My own view is that in order to speak well, you have to speak a lot. I prefer to delay speaking a lot until I have enough words so that I can actually have meaningful conversations. I have been in situations where I don't have much vocabulary. I don't understand what the other person is saying on Skype or whatever, and we just say the same things over and over again. And so I'm not expanding my capability in the language. Comes a point, and I would say that in my own case with the mini stories now, I've started speaking earlier. In the case of Czech, I waited 6, 7, 8 months, and I thought that was early because with Russian, I waited more than a year before speaking. But now with the mini stories, I find that it kind of gives me momentum. And after 3 months, I started speaking in Arabic and Persian and Turkish, and you can see videos on my YouTube channel of me speaking those languages. So I think it's a matter of personal preference, but don't underestimate the extent to which input activities prepare you for speaking. And I have had the experience many times, like I didn't speak to my Arabic tutor for 6 months, but I did a fair amount of listening and reading, and she was amazed at how well I spoke, how much I had improved in those intervening 6 months just through listening and reading. Shelby, who started with LingQ on French, and we have been doing this series, and she's just been listening and reading, and she doesn't like the mini stories like I do. I enjoy the mini stories. To me, it's just rote, like lots of repetition, and I can do them. It's like listening to a Buddhist mantra. Shelby doesn't. She is of a different generation. She prefers music, songs, and she found some other interesting content that were more to her taste. But the point is, she spent a lot of time listening and reading, and then we spoke after, it was a 12-week thing, and she was amazing. She was amazing. So the listening and reading, it's not purely passive. What we acquire passively, I don't know if this is relevant, but there is a thing called mirror neurons. And when you hear someone play the piano, for example, the neurons in the brain activate the same way as if you were playing the piano. So I'm not a neuroscientist. I can't connect that to the phenomenon of lots of listening and reading helping you in your output, but it does. However, ultimately, at the time of your choosing, you got to start speaking. And I start with once a week, and then I might move it up to twice a week. It's difficult to get enough speaking just via the internet to make a big difference. Where you really take off in a language is if you have the opportunity to be with people a lot, like you have a whole evening, 3-4 hours, you're with the native speaker, you have trouble, you're afraid you're not speaking quickly enough to stay in the conversation, and you're struggling to understand it. That kind of intense involvement, immersion is what does it. However, a couple of times a week via Skype is also useful. So I think the question there is not that you become a bird fed by its mother. You're always in control. You can do whatever you want. You can speak to yourself. You can keep a diary. You can connect with people on the internet. And so really it's a matter of what you want to do.
All right,
Hi,
great.
Steve. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no worries. I just want to let everyone know we're going to go into breakout rooms now. These rooms will have about
Sorry,
3 to 4.
Eric, one thing there were a couple of other questions that I thought were interesting that were related. And it's about this issue of, when is it comprehensible? How much should I listen? When do I move on? This comes up all the time, okay? So I just want to leave one more thought before you go to your breakout rooms. How much you understand when you move on is entirely up to the learner. There is significant research showing that if you stay with one thing until you understand it 100%, that is in fact very inefficient. The brain likes novelty. You are better off to move on when you understand 50, even 30%, go to something else that you understand 30%, then you can go back to that first one. In other words, this what's known as interleaving. Don't try to master stuff. Give it a good crack, then move on to something else, then go back to the first. This idea that you're going to master something, master even like a declension table, or get to where you understand 100% of a particular lesson, that's elusive. That's an illusion. It's not going to happen. It's all input. It's all the language coming at your brain. Your brain is starting to form patterns. And so don't stay too long in one. And the term comprehensible, again, obviously when we start, nothing is comprehensible. So obviously you progress from zero comprehensible to a small percentage, but you don't want to stay with the one thing until it becomes 100% comprehensible, because it won't. But if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, back to 1, gradually, slowly the lights start to come on and more of it becomes comprehensible. So I hope that's helpful.
Hi, Steve. My name is Anthony. I'm from Peru. I'm learning English. I started 3 months ago to study English very seriously. Now I am trying to speak more frequently, but my goal is not to achieve, how do you say, fluency in speaking. I want to read fluently. I can achieve this because my goal is to read articles about nutrition. This because I am studying nutrition and I want to read this, and I don't understand the majority that I read, but I try to put all my effort to understand. But maybe it's because I don't practice my grammar, or maybe it's because I don't have enough words. I don't know why.
Did you say you want to read about nutrition?
Yes, nutrition topics. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, you are fluent. Okay. You speak very comfortably. You use the language correctly. Your word order, word usage, grammar, everything is fine. Maybe I could find a mistake if I listened to you again, but I didn't hear any. Now, when you go into a particular field, could be nutrition, it could be nuclear science, it could be sports. Obviously, there are going to be technical terms. There are going to be certain phrases that are used often. And if you are not familiar with those, it's going to be difficult.
It's 10.
So you just have to stay with it. And those are the ideal kind of contents to import into LingQ, look up words and phrases. And if you can combine the sort of content about nutrition, if there is audio available, it's easier because listening is higher resonance. It kind of, if you can combine the listening with the reading, even better. But even just plain reading and reading a lot on a subject that you are interested in. So that gives you a big advantage. Like you're familiar with the subject, you're interested in the subject. If you just keep reading and listening, you will acquire those words. And in terms of your ability to speak and your grammatical, the accuracy of your language, it's already very, very good. So I just think it's a matter of time. Patience is the big word in language learning. Nothing happens overnight. As this Manfred Spitzer that I often quote, German neuroscientist, he says, the brain learns. The brain has to learn. The brain is a pattern recognition machine. It will learn. The disadvantage is the brain learns slowly.
All right, if everyone can mute themselves, and I'll leave it to Steve to conclude the meeting. So I'm just going to turn my microphone, and Steve, take it away.
Well, the only thing I would be interested in knowing, what were some of the issues that came up in the other you know, breakout sessions. First of all, I should say I was a bit disappointed because I didn't have my glasses on and I thought it was a breakfast room, but I got there was a breakout room. So, you know, I still got to go and grab a cup of coffee now. No, we had discussions about, you know, learning Italian if you're Spanish, or, you know, TV versus, you know, listening and reading. I wonder what were should we discuss some of the issues that came up in the other groups, or should we just save that for the next session?
I think we can save that for the next session.
Okay.
I would love to see the same people and more people to join the next session. We have tons of participants, but if anyone has any questions, you can definitely hit link up on Twitter, and we'll look at that. And of course, we'll be looking into doing something like this similar. So just keep your eyes on LingQ's social media accounts for new updates. And yeah, Steve, you can go ahead.
Okay. There are some questions flashing up on the screen here, but I guess we should deal with those. You're saying people should email or get them to us through social media, and we.
I mean, I think we can spend 5 minutes answering questions. I mean, everybody's here now. Unless,
okay.
Yeah, I think there's no.
So
reason.
So should I go to I have a chat list here. Should I address the questions that are on that list?
Sure.
Okay. So share what you talked about in the chat. I haven't signed up for anything as it seems overwhelming to me. Is there a way to go step by step? So Mark, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can feel overwhelming at first for people because there is a lot happening. We get that comment not infrequently, and we are working on simplifying the interface in a new version. But for now, first thing is don't be afraid to click around on things. And fundamentally, what you're doing is you're reading and listening. You're clicking on blue words that are new to you. You're seeing a bunch of meanings that other users have used or created. Try and find one that fits that context. Don't worry, you don't have to be right. If it turns out that you were wrong, you'll eventually figure that out. Big thing in language learning is don't expect perfection. You're not here to learn it, nail it down right now. You're just kind of giving yourself an idea of what that word means. You'll see it again later and again in future lessons. And over time, you'll actually really learn what that word means. But you're clicking on blue words, looking them up, choosing a meaning to make that word yellow. Those yellow words are now words you're trying to learn. You'll see them again in this lesson and subsequent lessons. Over time, you'll realize that, hey, I know some of these yellow words. You'll then start to move them to known. That's the basic flow. Once you kind of get used to the basic flow, you can then start exploring some of the other functionality. And to do so, click on in the corner under your profile, there's a help menu. You'll find some useful resources like our Getting Started Guide, Grammar Guide, Link Academy. There's videos, there's help questions. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. But don't be intimidated by the interface. Just click around.
Hi, I have a question. I wasn't sure if I could ask or if you wanted to go through the list.
I'll go for it.
Okay. All right. So something that has bothered me something that has bothered me regarding learning languages in general is that I feel as though if I do not sound like a native speaker, I'm never going to achieve success. Or I feel as though I'm always going to sound like the American. And while I realize that in the United States, because we're from all over, people here are from all over the world and they grow up with different families and stuff like that. So we all have different accents. So it's much more acceptable to have an accent of any type in America or the United States than it is, say, in Germany. If you have an accent in German, and when you speak German, you stick out like a sore thumb. And they say that it's important that your pronunciation is good so that you're fully understood, so that the meaning comes across. You want to know 10,000 words, that's great, but if you can't pronounce them, you're out of luck. So I was wondering, I guess what my question is, can you give me your opinion about pronunciation, accents, not how important that is, but how, I guess, to strive for the best accent possible?
Okay. First of all, very, very, very few people who learn languages as adults end up sounding like a native. Okay, they may be very good. The native pronunciation is our goal. It's our model. It's what we imitate, but we just don't get there. It's like me playing golf. I'd like to, play golf like Tiger Woods, but I won't. But I still enjoy playing golf. And I have dealt with so many people around the world: Japanese, Swedish, German, French, Spanish. And if we're all speaking English, we all communicate without any difficulty, and they all have an accent, and they all have certain structures that come from their native language, which are not, idiomatic. They're not correct in English. And it doesn't prevent us from communicating and, being good friends or whatever. So it's just, to me, this idea that you're going to strive to sound like a native is just not realistic. I think too, I've been in Germany, I've been in Japan. Certainly in Japan, I'm recognized as not a local. And in Germany, I'm recognized as not local when I speak. And it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother them. I think we can be, and there's nothing wrong with sounding like an American or sounding like a Frenchman or sounding like a Japanese, because that's what you are. The main thing is who you are, how well you connect with those people, and in terms of the language use, how you use the words, whether you're able to use the words correctly. Most of the time, it won't be 100%. And if you have a significant vocabulary. Now, in terms of how to improve your pronunciation, I think a lot of listening is important, because you can't pronounce what you can't hear. So you've got to really hear it. And you've got to hear not only the individual pronunciation of the words, but the intonation. Every language has a different type of intonation. In English, we tend to be a little more sing-songy than the French, for example, that are kind of more monotonous. And then the Japanese have a form of intonation. So I think it's quite useful in LingQ if you listen to a sentence, say you take the mini stories where they are time-stamped, and you can listen to a sentence, you can go through sentence view and listen to each sentence spoken by the native speaker, and then try to imitate that intonation. Even if you fumble some of the sounds, you can't make a guttural R in German or whatever it might be, it doesn't matter. Get the intonation. And if you get the intonation right, your language is going to sound very comfortable to the native speaker. So I don't think it's that big a problem. I think people make too much to do about pronunciation. And B, there are things you can do. Focus on listening, focus on the intonation. And then when you speak, don't worry about it.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for your answer. I appreciate it.
Now, should I go through some of the questions here that are in the chat box?
Sure.
Okay, so there's this question about 100, two things that I see here. One is create 100 links a day. You'll find out what your comfort level is. Given the amount of new material that you want to go through every day, you may find that 50 links a day is your comfort level. But get some level that you're prepared to maintain. I found when I gave myself the ridiculous goal of 100 links in each of 3 languages, Arabic, Persian, and Turkish, I would be there 10:30 at night preparing to go to bed and grab my book to read, and I say, holy cow, I'm still behind in Arabic and Persian. So then I would have to go and slog my way through something so that I could create 100 links. So that was too much pressure. Find something that's comfortable and stay with it. 100 for one language, I don't think is unrealistic. It depends on how much new vocabulary there is in the material you're going through. Find something that's comfortable for you and stay with it. Also, with regard to reading the mini stories 40 times, I don't read the mini stories 40 times. I don't read them more than once when I'm reading them. I tend to listen a lot. Again, I don't sit down and listen to the same story 15 times, but I have 60 mini stories. I go to, listen to course audio. So I now have a playlist of 60 mini stories. I put it on shuffle and get in my car, and for the next 30 or 40 minutes, I will be listening to a number of mini stories selected at random that I've heard before. And every time I discover something new, and keep doing that, eventually total number of times listened becomes 10, 20, 30, 40. So it's not a matter of sort of block trying to nail down a mini story. It's just that I find these mini stories quite good in terms of getting a better feel for the basic structures and the high frequency verbs in the language. But I certainly don't recommend that you read the same story same story, 20 times in a row, I think the brain would turn right off.
We have a guy asking, should he set a target of 100 links a day and create 100 links, go through content until he creates his 100 links, or should he choose a smaller number and try and learn those?
I would go for the former, because you want to expose yourself to the language. And I believe that the sort of extensive approach, pushing yourself into new content that might be interesting to you. You're discovering new blue words, which is also fresh and new. And you will come across your yellow words anyway. And I think that is better. The brain is more alert doing that, in my experience, than trying to kind of really nail down, like go over this because you can go through the same little lesson with those yellow words in the hope that, if I go through it often enough, those words will become known, but they won't. I just find that every effort that I've made, and I've done it many, many times, to try to nail something down ends up being elusive. And in my experience, I prefer to push forward, and along the way, what do you know, some of these yellow words disappear and become known. Okay. Reading on our listing. Oh, now here's a question about someone learning Japanese and kanji. Yeah, kanji is, for Japanese, I find that in order to be able to read, and reading is important to learning, you need a lot of kanji. And kanji is the one example where spaced repetition really works. Because it's almost like you're learning sort of discrete objects. Yes, it's connected to the meaning within the context, but not to the same extent that sort of words that you hear. So you do have to put in an effort with the kanji, use a spaced repetition system or some other system, but combine that with the benefits of listening and reading on LingQ. And every time you come across the kanji in LingQ, you can look it up again, and that's also helping to reinforce it. But I think the idea that you take what I did 50 years ago, initially 10 and eventually 30 kanji a day that I go through on some sort of a spaced repetition basis, and I shuffle them back in, because however, if I do 10 and the next day I've forgotten half of them. So whatever you do, you're going to forget. You have to keep on relearning, and eventually they stick. Okay. Yeah.
How should you use the vocab recap? I guess review. I feel overwhelmed by the number of links.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think that one of the problems with any kind of a review process, spaced repetition process, is just the way words that need to be reviewed just starts to accumulate, and pretty soon you could spend your whole time reviewing words, which is not where you want to be. It's more fun to be finding these words in a context where you're coming across the words on some basis randomly, but you're also getting used to the language. You're hearing the language, you're reading the language. So you're doing a lot of other things that are connecting you with the language in a way that simply reviewing words doesn't do. So I would personally, I ignore, like I think I've showed you my statistics from Arabic. I have 50,000 saved links, 50,000 saved links. There's no way I could go through and review those 50,000 links. And what am I motivated to do? I look forward to my new transcribed podcast from Al Jazeera, because I want to get into something new. It's that sentiment of discovery. And along the way, the yellow words, some of them eventually become known. So I would not be overly concerned. Where I use the review a lot is first time with an article, I might review the saved links as I turn the page. So I'm in LingQ, I'm going to the next page, and I can review the words that were on that page. And even if I'm in sentence view, there might be 3 or 4 rather, brand new words, and to just kind of focus in on those to get a little better exposure to those new words. I'll review them as I turn the page. But I won't go back into my list of 50,000 words and try to knock them off. When I say I won't, I occasionally do, because it's very often useful to find words that are alphabetically arranged, because then you start to see 4 or 5 words that have the same root because they start with the same letter or with the same component. So that can sometimes be helpful. as a variety, as an activity that's, you know, different than simply listening and reading. Okay.
But I guess for the most part, don't worry. That's a common theme we hear in our support questions is, oh, I'm overwhelmed by all the links I'm creating. I don't want to create more. That's not the right approach. Create more, keep creating links. That's the best thing you can do. And every once in a while you can review some of them. If you're doing Japanese and you want to work on certain kanji, you can make lists, tag lists of keywords you want to review, but you should be creating far more links than you can possibly review, and don't worry about it.
Okay, I see some requests for Irish. I guess, Mark, the usual answer is if we get 60 mini stories in Irish, and if there's a good supply of other content that we can add to that or that people can import, and if there are online dictionaries, which I'm assuming there are for Irish, then we would add it.
Yeah, we've directed people there. There's a contribute page under the community tab on LingQ. So if anyone's interested in helping create Irish content or to help get Irish or any other language added, you'll find information on that page.
You got it.
I guess probably we've been at this for an hour now. It's a good time to end things for now. We'll do this again. I think it's gone well. Of course, any feedback that any of you have, please let us know. We're doing these to help all of us understand.
Can I say one thing?
Also meet each other. Yes.
I was just going to say, Alka was asking about Indian languages. We do have Gujarati because somebody volunteered to produce the mini stories in Gujarati. That's not the most widely spoken Indian language. I think we have people working on Hindi and volunteers working on Hindi and Urdu. So again, the same rules apply. Go to the contribute page, and if you can help us create content in Indian languages, we're happy to add them.
Okay, with that, we'll hope to see you all next time.
Thank you.
Happy linking. Bye-bye.